Springfield's Talk 104.1, and hello, everyone. Good Wednesday. My name is Nick Reed, streaming live, KSGF.com. Of course, big conversation yesterday after the show. The Supreme Court releasing a couple of their rulings. There were really three major ones, one having to do with campaign finance stuff and loosening up some of the anti-free speech restrictions that were on that. But it is clearly getting overshadowed with a couple of other rulings, both significant. One, allowing states to protect women, protect girls in sports specifically. And, the downside of that, it does allow also discrimination and essentially the elimination of girls' sports by allowing boys to compete in girls' sports as long as they say that they're girls. And so, the downside is there are going to be states in this country, unless the federal government, Congress steps in, doubt that they will, because it's an 80-20 issue, and seemingly when Republicans have 80% of the population on their side, they don't see that as a mandate, much like the Save ID or the Save America Act, IDs for voting in order to secure voting security, and now protecting girls in sports. These are 80-20 issues, 80% of Americans on the side of where Republicans say they are, but again, don't expect them to really do anything about it because they seemingly want to lose the midterm elections. The upside is you can look at a map, and in all likelihood, if it is a red state, girls will have protections. Democrat-run states, those protections will be wiped away. The Title IX is all but irrelevant because the whole point, of course, was for girls to be able to have spaces that they could compete with only other girls. And when you don't like the rules, as usual, the left, you just change the definition of things. And if you want guys to compete against girls or be able to, you just change the definition of what a guy means and a girl means. And that is what the Supreme Court did. So it's kind of a mixed bag, but it does give in our system some spaces in our country for families to raise their daughters if they do want them protected from these Democrat policies. And then there's, of course, the birther issue, which or the birthing issue, the birthing tourism issue. This is something I think is a much bigger problem than a lot of people recognize. I think part of that is because Republicans don't want to be accused of demonizing people from other countries. It's almost similar to when Trump noted that so many of the legals come across the border into the United States, they're not good people. They're human traffickers, they're sex traffickers, they're child molesters, they're rapists. And he was in turn accused of saying all Mexicans are murderers and rapists, which of course is not what he said. But Republicans are fully aware of how that works and fully aware of how the media will spread disinformation in order to demonize positions they don't care for. And I think Republicans might worry that if they really highlight this birther tourism issue, which is where, and there are actual companies set up, where you pay a fee, particularly from China. You're 8.5 months pregnant, you come here, have your baby, and then you go back home and you automatically have a child that's an American citizen. And I suspect that some Republicans are afraid if they really bring to light the serious nature and the vastness of this problem, then they will be accused of being anti-Asian and trying to paint all that this country's, built on Asian immigrants and the Asian community, and there will be all of these PSAs on left-wing channels about anti-Asian hate and how Republicans are trying to stir up hatred against Asians by painting them all as people who came here in such a nefarious way. Similar, in fact, you may forget this, but there was about a 2-week period in which The Democrats were going to places like Chinatown during COVID because the Trump administration had noted, hey, this seems like it's coming out of China, and stopped some of the flights from China coming in until we got a handle on it. Of course, it was accurate. It was specifically Wuhan, and at that point, Democrats were hilariously discouraging people from even wearing masks while going to Chinatown or other highly Asian populated areas in order to demonstrate Donald Trump was racist. And point being is, I think that the focus on this birther tourism is something Republicans are afraid that if they bring it to light and note the seriousness of it, they'll be accused of being anti-Asian. This is a massive problem. There's one, obviously, most of you recognize this, and I'm not going to break down absolutely everything that the justices said because that was done a tremendous amount yesterday, and at some point it becomes redundant. But there are a couple of components, including the actual words of the person who authored that clause within the 14th Amendment, what it was intended to cover and what it was not intended to cover. I think somewhat relevant, although a majority of the Supreme Court justices did not. But there's even a component to this outside of the having a baby here, and then the idea that a lot of people recognize is something to fear is then, they go back, they're raised in communist China, and then when they're an adult, they move here, and then they vote, and they can even run for office. I mean, you can have, by these rules, you can have a person that spends one day of birth here in the United States, and then move back at the age of 35, run for president, and of course Democrats would, being a communist, vote for that individual, nominate them, and now is it likely that scenario is going to play out? It's not likely, but this is what the door is open for, but there's a component to this that I think is even far more worrisome and likely. So I want to talk about that coming up. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. Right now, the latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, we'll see a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92 and heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 92.
So the big decision that many note will have massive implications because of what it signals to foreign countries is this birthright citizenship decision. And I should note that Donald Trump, even prior to the ruling, said, hey, we have to live with it. Now, it does, with their decision. Now, of course, there are means to fix that, as opposed to someone like Mamdani, who, with this recent Supreme Court ruling regarding illegal aliens, has flat out said, we just won't comply. And how that runs a little counter to what we're told by Democrats in the media, that Donald Trump is this reckless dictator that feels he's above the law. Now, when it comes to the issue of the tourism, and for those, if you're not fully aware of how this works, and there are companies out there that exist for this purpose, you pay, sort of like, we do the Great Escape. And, you call up, you put down a deposit, you pay a certain amount of money, and then you go on the trip. Well, it works the same way, but the whole purpose is to have a baby here in the United States. And then after you have your baby, you go back home and you have a U.S. citizen now in your household. And there are a number of benefits to that not for the United States, but for the family or the country that family resides in. Now, this goes to the 14th Amendment, which was intended specifically to give citizenship to the freed slaves. And it has, like so many things, the language has been molested in order to cover other things. And I think that it is important to note that the author of the provision dealing with this question in the 14th Amendment was a Senator Jacob Howard. And in his speech promoting this provision, he said the following in 1866, May 30th. Every person born within the limits of the United States and subject to the jurisdiction is by virtue of natural law a citizen of the United States. This is not, of course, or this will not, rather, of course, include persons born in the United States who are foreigners, aliens, who belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States, but will include every other class of persons. So we know what this provision meant. The author told us what it meant, and more importantly, what it did not mean. It did not mean someone who is a foreigner who comes to the United States and then has a baby. It is very, very, very clear. So there's no gray area. They want there to be gray area on this, which is why many of you have never heard of Senator Jacob Howard or heard in his speech when he is noting, of course, the one thing that this is not covering. I mean, he almost says it as if it's obviously, I don't need to mention this. I mean, his exact quote was, "This will not, of course, include persons born in the U.S. who are foreigners, aliens, or belong to the families of ambassadors or foreign ministers accredited to the government of the United States." So he's like, of course this isn't going to. I mean, we don't need to concern ourselves with that. We all know what this is about. This is clearly what it's not about. The insanity of the fact that anyone, other than people who really truly want to destroy the country, support this concept of allowing anyone from a foreign nation, including our enemies, to create citizens, U.S. citizens, that then can be housed in their own borders. It's a suicide mission. Now, I understand some of these new Democrats who openly say they hate the United States, openly say the United States is a horrible country that needs to be destroyed, and then they get elected on it. I understand why they support this, because they want the country destroyed. They say this. They campaign on it. They win on it. So this makes sense. But these other Democrats out there, or these outlets that at least tell themselves that they don't hate the country, they don't want it destroyed, that celebrate this, it is hard to fathom people are that, frankly, stupid. Here, I'm just going to hit on what I think is the most dangerous aspect of this, and I have not heard it discussed, other than I mentioned it. Well, I think when oral arguments were going on, so that would have been, I don't know, however many months ago. And that is the fact that we allow people who are U.S. citizens that are not in the U.S. and don't even have a residence in the U.S. to vote. We keep hearing these scenarios of people from countries, including our enemies like China. It just blows my mind. They're openly doing this. The things that China openly does to us, and we act as if they're not at war with us. And this is another one. They send their people over here to have babies and then bring them back. And so the nightmare scenario that keeps getting verbally portrayed or explained is that, well, then once those individuals are adults, they come back here to the United States and they've been raised, communist China, that mindset. And then they are going to be politically active, and then they can vote. They don't have to come here to vote. This is the thing that it seems like such an obvious 5-alarm fire, yet no one seems to be talking about it. Also, and I wanted to share with you this article in the New York Post, just to give you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about in terms of numbers. Now, this is from March of this year. In the New York Post, pregnant Chinese women have turned a tropical paradise into a maternity ward, pumping out babies who automatically become U.S. citizens daily. The Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands, a U.S. territory northeast of Guam in the Pacific Ocean, has been flooded with birth tourists since 2009, when then President Barack Obama introduced a visa waiver program for Chinese nationals. China watchers estimate about 1,000 companies offer birth tourism to the Northern Mariana Islands, other U.S. overseas territories, and even the U.S. mainland. See, this is the other thing. It doesn't even have to be within the United States that they have their baby. It can be a U.S. territory. And the estimations are there are 1,000 that's just China. According to their estimates, 1.5 million American babies are currently being raised in China by Chinese parents who participated in birth tourism. 1.5 million. Now, what do you think happens when they become voting age? Now, we got to take a break. And I just really keep hoping that I think maybe because this is so obvious, it seems like it's not possible, so this isn't the major concern that people are talking about right now, or they tell, clearly we won't let that happen. Really? You think that blue states aren't going to do everything they can to make sure that the communist Chinese already have the law on their side? This is the thing. Now, while technically the birther tourism thing is illegal and they're not supposed to do it, how's that law getting enforced? And how is it going to get enforced? Particularly once Democrats are running things on a federal level. I mean, I suppose you can ban pregnant foreigners from visiting the country. How well do you think that's going to go over? Do you really think Republicans that won't even, with the current party leadership, pass requirements to prove you're a citizen to vote? You think they're going to ban pregnant people, pregnant women from coming to the country? I don't think so. And you know that they're not if Democrats are in charge. I mean, Democrats certainly aren't going to stop that. So this idea that, and this is one of the arguments Democrats will make, well, it's already illegal to do it. It doesn't matter if it's illegal. It's illegal for voter fraud to occur, but that occurs. And now that the Supreme Court has really greenlit this as an industry and said fully, it's ridiculous. I mean, they've legalized the benefit of a crime. On one hand, they say, well, now you can't do that. It's against the law to come here just to have a baby. But if you do, you win. If you do, you have a child that's a U.S. citizen. We're going to take a break. More on this. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92, heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 92.
To me, the most alarming aspect of this Supreme Court ruling is one that, as best I know, has not been discussed. And I think because it is just such a nuclear bomb to go off in our country, it seems unfathomable, and maybe that's it. Maybe the Republican Party is afraid of being labeled anti-Asian, but it's the fact that as an American citizen, you don't have to be in America to vote in our elections. You know, you hear about overseas ballots. That's not just military. That's anyone that's an American citizen. So you hear about these against because it's such a deliberate infiltration by the communist Chinese government that it does get a lot of focus, as it should. Because listen, I think people in their minds oftentimes think that people from China, they can just pop up and head here to the United States, and they're doing it sort of like if in America you want to go to Ireland for the weekend, okay, fly to Ireland. You just got to get the money together. That's not how it works under a communist country. You don't just get to leave whenever you want to. Even a lot of non-communist countries are that way. You have to have permission from the government. These people that come to the United States are doing it with either the knowledge or the insistence of the communist Chinese government to have babies here. And then they take them back home. They are U.S. citizens, according to the Supreme Court, which means they can vote in our elections even while they are over in China. There was a New York Post story I mentioned in the previous segment that's talking only about the Mariana Islands, north of Guam. And since the Obama administration, there's been a recognition that it has been a hot spot for this birther tourism, as it's called, birthing tourism. 1,000 businesses catering specifically to China. And they estimate that currently in China are 1.5 million American citizens now, babies. Chinese babies being raised in China, 1.5 million. That's only from that one small island. They will have the ability to vote. That's just the one island. We talk about how close our presidential elections are. These swing states. Here's the other. We look at all the ways China has infiltrated this country, and China has been at war with us refusing to acknowledge that they are at war with us. They've been at war with us in terms of infiltrating our celebrities, getting them on the financial hook so that they spread propaganda for them. They have infiltrated news and movie studios to the point that, these artists that care so much about their artistic freedoms will at times, and this has been done, alter movie plots or the ending of movies in order to have them shown in China. They pay God knows how much money, certainly well into the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, on our university campuses to get special access. So they've infiltrated that. We know they have set up their own police stations in some areas, New York being one of them. Now they mask them as these centers for Chinese, if you have a Chinese immigrant to the United States and they need help knowing how it is to navigate around, it's just a friendly little concierge of sorts for them. But what we actually know is that these are stations, these are monitoring stations set up by the Chinese government here in the United States to monitor and to threaten these people. So we've allowed them to infiltrate that way. The drugs, all of the drugs, the fentanyl, this scourge on our society that has resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths unnecessarily, have originated from China. I mean, they are constantly, of course, sometimes it's even so brazen, like during the Biden administration, we allowed them to fly a spy balloon over our country, sending back information to Beijing in real time and not shooting it down until it was done. And now we are allowing them to create people who can vote in our president, in all elections. This is insane to me. That I get it, a segment of the Democrat Party that has fully acknowledged they want to bring this country down and destroy it, that this is something they support. But you're telling me there's no Democrats out there? I mean, I guess Fetterman probably. And where are all the I know that there's some Republicans that are quite upset about this, and there are some Republicans that are calling for legislation, but the sense of urgency really seems to be lacking here. You go to fvap.gov. This is foreign voting. So if you are overseas in a foreign country, but you're an American citizen, and you're voting, so you have to have an address. Your voting residence is your address in the state in which you were last domiciled. Well, what does that mean? I mean, some of these rules are irrelevant depending on the state. Your residency is still considered valid even if you no longer own property or have any ties whatsoever to the state. This is the government's website. It remains valid even if your intent to return to that state is uncertain. So in other words, you have no plans whatsoever. You have no residency. You have no ties. Not a single thing that ties you to the state, and you fully acknowledge, I don't have any intent on visiting. And your previous address is no longer even a recognized residential address. That's okay too. So the rules are so broad, they are essentially irrelevant. They're meaningless. The way they exist will allow for these individuals that are born here, raised in our enemies' countries, and by the way, not just raised there. We're not talking about a cultural preference. This is the communist Chinese government. They put people in concentration camps who don't comply. Millions of people are in concentration camps because they did not comply with the orders of the communist Chinese. Or they just dared even veer off in terms of their belief system or their speech. They just put anyone there that they want to. And you start looking at some of these states, you know, you and I, we look at Pennsylvania, it's a purple state. And, well, Wisconsin, it could be a close one this presidential election. All they have to do is, claim... Like, what are we looking at? What was the last several elections? 30,000 point spread in Wisconsin. Well, let's take 50,000 of the American-born Chinese that are now of voting age and get them registered in that state. And how loose the rules are. And if you're talking about a state in particular with a Secretary of State that is a Democrat, I mean, we really think that they're going to prevent that from happening? I mean, I keep waiting for someone to say, oh, no, there's this complete and total inability for this to occur. And I keep waiting for that because it's like, why is this not the leading concern? And not to mention Russia or any other country. Any country And it doesn't even have to be born within the United States. It could be a territory that they're born in. And they are a U.S. citizen with the right to vote in our country, even if they don't live here. And the way that the Democrats will do it, they'll make it all very messy when this all comes to a head. And unfortunately, it'll probably only really be something that is, a real serious attempt to deal with it when it's too late, and you have hundreds of thousands or millions, as I said, just from the Mariana Islands. I know I keep repeating this, but it's so significant. Just from the Mariana Islands, since the time of the Obama administration, 1.5 million babies have been born by Chinese parents there and are being raised in China. That's 1.5 million votes just from that one island. That is more than enough to determine an election. And you don't have to have more of them than U.S. citizens for them to control the elections. There just have to be enough of them to fill the difference. So if the difference in an election is, 300,000 votes total, all they need is 300,001 to determine the outcome of a presidential election. And given they have 1.5 million just from the Mariana Islands that will have the right to vote in our country, being raised in China right now, we're just a few presidential elections away from having zero sovereignty when it comes to our presidential elections. And anyone that is like, well, now there are safeguards in place, that is either naive or dishonest. Look at the states that are run by Democrats. But again, they've made it legal. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. I want a great homeloan.com for all of those home loan needs, those refinancing needs, the reverse mortgage needs. What does that mean? How does that work? Well, that's where the Carrickers and their team come into play. They can answer all of those questions for you. Do not make any decisions as to whether or not or more importantly, I should say, don't decide not to because you think you can't. Alex Carricker, once again, we were talking with him on Friday out at Scramblers and saying, when it comes to particularly veterans, a lot of times veterans think, oh, boy, my credit's kind of screwed up and everything. There are certain special loans for you that if you have written yourself off, you may be cutting yourself short. People still, he said, he has people think that you need 20% down. Those are the days of old. That's not how it works any longer. And there are so many other options out there, which can even include not needing any down payment. So don't stop yourself from going from the world of renting to owning simply because you think you won't qualify or you think you don't have enough money set aside in order to make it happen. Get all the info you need from the Carrickers and their team. It starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com. All right, couple of questions. Let's see. One of the questions asked is, okay, so what happens if, or when, because it will, if it hasn't already? You have communist Chinese send people over here to have babies. They go back. Our government says, yep, they're U.S. citizens. That's all it takes. What happens when that U.S. citizen has a baby? Is that a U.S. citizen? I think, yeah. I mean, if you're a U.S. citizen and you have a baby in another country, that baby's a U.S. citizen. That's how we operate. I mean, if you go on vacation in Germany or something and you have a baby while you're there, your baby is still a U.S. citizen. And what the Supreme Court has ruled is that this isn't some sort of special consideration. This is straight up, you are a citizen who has the exact same legal rights as every other citizen has in the United States. And so, given that status and knowing that if you are a U.S. citizen and you're in China and you have a baby, that baby is still a U.S. citizen, that tells me that, yeah, that's how that would work. What U.S. state do their votes get assigned to for the Electoral College if they don't reside in the state? Well, so they will have to have listed a domicile. Now, this is part of the point of contention that was like what constitutes a domicile, and the minority in the Supreme Court decision felt that, well, it's like where you live. But like so many other things, particularly with the left, it's all up a matter of definition, and it's like, well, it's wherever you are at the given moment. So there's a number of ways it can be done. I mean, the more effort involved. I mean, I guess here's how I would do it if I'm the Chinese. All right, well, I have somebody who is an American-born Chinese person and send them over here to the U.S. to live. And then for every one of those, I have 1,000 American citizens who are born in China, register that as their address. There you have it. Now, I know you're thinking, but can't we stop that? Well, I mean, look at the insanity of what all these courts are ruling as it is. And how are you going to prove that they don't live there? And listen, I want to read to you again. Here's the thing. You don't have, in order to vote as a U.S. citizen while living in another country, you don't have to have, this is from FVAP.gov. You no longer have to own property or have any ties to the state. You don't have to have any intent to return to the state. And the previous address that you listed as your address doesn't have to even be recognized as a residential address any longer. So it's that easy. And we know that even if somebody wants to challenge that somehow in court and argue, well, but they haven't lived there for this period of time, that doesn't matter. I mean, this is the problem that's been created here. The law is on the side of foreigners now. The law, our voting laws and our immigration laws are on the side of our enemies in the sense that it benefits them. They can use them how they want. Now, there are some that have argued, Congress can, at least change the law to try to make it more difficult. Obviously, there is I guess this is how I would start. You do go the constitutional amendment route in order to fix this, to change the 14th Amendment so that it very specifically does not include babies who are born here by foreigners, as it was intended by the author of this portion of the 14th Amendment. Now, I know that the obvious is coming to mind. Well, you've got to get like 2/3 of this and 2/3 of that, and there's no way Democrats are going to be for it. Yeah. I mean, even if some are, but at the very least, force the issue. At the very least, exhaust that pathway. Try. I mean, is it not worth trying? Is protecting our elections from a foreign enemy worth it? I think it's worth it. While the John Thunes and the others may be like, well, we're not going to be able to do it. This is about allowing other countries to participate in our elections. Push the issue. And then we'll take steps from there. And my fear is that the Republican Party, frankly, is so pathetic and doesn't really seem to understand the magnitude, with the exception of some. Some Republicans obviously do. The problem is they're not the majority, and they're not in charge. I mean, if I have to hear just that soft-toned Johnson, like, well, now we just, this is very upsetting. This is beyond upsetting. This is beyond troubling. This is 5-alarm fire stuff. And this Republican approach of, oh, well, this is very concerning, very upsetting, and we're going to have to really come together and see if we can, can you just in this instance act like Democrats do when they're passionate about something and make it happen, make it an issue? I mean, while Republicans can't get, things passed that 80% of the American people support, admitted communists and socialists are running around managing to get elected in this country. Democrats are, to some degree, successfully running a Nazi. It's as if their capabilities know no bounds whatsoever, yet Republicans cannot seem to get themselves out of a wet paper bag for something that they claim they care so much about. Which it really does start to make you wonder, do they care that much about, or is it just marketing? Again, I know some do. The problem is they're not the ones in charge of the Republican Party right now. Yeah, somebody, he means domicile, right? Not domicile. Yeah, I did mean domicile, sorry. Uh, Another noting, if the communist regime imprisoned one of the Chinese American persons with what America considers illegal could lead to huge issue. I doubt it. I mean, honestly, I just I understand what you're saying here. The concept is, hey, well, wait a minute here. I mean, they put people in their own citizens in concentration camps and so forth, and so if American citizens are over there and do this, but we won't do anything about that. One, they probably won't do that anyhow because they'll use them in order to alter to decide our elections. But they'll probably also allow them to have Chinese citizenship because I think that they don't allow dual citizenship. I could be wrong, but they could make exceptions. I mean, here's the thing about the communists: they can do whatever they want. And frankly, we just have so much of we're so intertwined with them financially, and so many elected officials that have close relationships with them. I just we won't push back on something like that, I fear. And this is Springfield's Talk 1041. Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Nick Reed. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor, your hardscape outdoor living space, place, builders, designers. They really are the best. If you're wanting to have that outdoor kitchen or a dance area or a fire pit or yoga studio or whatever it is that you're looking to do outdoor and you want it done right, then Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor. These are the folks I recommend. I've used them. I know many of you have as well. If you're looking to go on the cheaper and have it done in a week or two from this date, probably want to check elsewhere. They do have a pretty decent wait time because they are in high demand because of the work they do. But if you are investing in something that you want to last decades and beyond, then I think it's worth it. Otherwise, to me, it's kind of wasting money. The landscaping, in addition to the hardscaping, the drainage away from your home or your business, the lighting, all of it, upscaling your home to a significant degree. And like I said, I'm just a big believer that if you're talking about the difference between like 20,000 or 30,000 or 5,000 and 10,000, and you're like, there's a big difference. But if one of them lasts decades while the other one within just a few years already needs some attention and repair, did you really save money? They do have a cost calculator to give you a ballpark idea on their website, where you can also see before and after pictures and reviews as well, including mine. HunterHardscapes.com is the site. Hunter Hardscapes and Outdoor under Nick's endorsements at KSGF.com. I did want to play one bit of audio, as there are a number of Republicans that are already calling for fixing the problem, and to me it's beyond problem, that has been really solidified by the Supreme Court ruling regarding anyone born here in the U.S. becoming an automatic U.S. citizen. One of those plans, and it's somewhat clever, is being sponsored by Bernie Moreno. He is a senator from Ohio. And it's not an insult to say he didn't put much work into it, because it wasn't his legislation. He has brought forth and is going to reintroduce the legislation that was put forth by Democrat Senate leader Harry Reid back in 1993. And here Harry Reid is, or at least a portion of him, talking about the legislation and the need for it at the time.
And we wonder, in this country, why we have an illegal immigration problem. If making it easy to be an illegal alien isn't enough, how about offering a reward for being an illegal immigrant? No sane country would do that, right? Guess again. If you break our laws by entering this country without permission and give birth to a child, we reward that child with U.S. citizenship and guarantee of full access to all public and social services this society provides. And that's a lot of services. Is it any wonder that 2/3 of the babies born at taxpayer expense at county-run hospitals in Los Angeles are born to illegal alien mothers? Just when the American people think nothing can be more absurd than the way we deal, or rather don't deal, with illegal immigration, they discover that we have a political asylum system that would qualify us for Senator Proxmire's Golden Fleece Award 1,000 times over.
Again, that was the leader of the Democrat Party in the Senate, Harry Reid, back in 1993. If you're new to the game, Democrats did not used to be anti-American. At least publicly. Virtually every position that the current Democrat Party claims is an extremist position by the Republicans is the same position that they held not too long ago, because it was in America's interest. They may have had a different idea about going about it and how to deal with the problem. These weren't issues in dispute. What is a boy? What is a girl? Should we have an open border? Should we allow just anyone to plop a baby down here in the United States and automatically become a U.S. citizen? Universally, we're all pretty much on the same page. The Democrat Party has become, those of you who were Democrats back in the 90s and you're still Democrats today, do you not realize you are in a completely different world? You have, if you don't recognize this, they have changed you. You have just gone along with the crowd, regardless of how extreme they are. The crowd that promotes anti-Americanism, the crowd that mimics and shares the talking point of terrorist, the crowd that nominates for a U.S. Senate seat an admirer of Nazis, a crowd that elects, most recently, a woman in New York who is opposed to interracial relationships. In other words, straight up racist. Is this who you are? You know, I see Lincoln Huff and Crystal Quaid, and, you know, they're having this nice little town hall meeting. Is that who you are, Crystal Quaid? Are you the party of racist, of Nazis, of anti-women? I mean, you this is your party. Every elected Democrat in Missouri, this is your party. This is who you are. You can no longer claim that those are the positions of a few bad apples, because you're all in with this stuff. And as voters, those who vote this way, this is who you are voting for. As opposed to, in what's insane about all of this, so many of the Democrats that are in elected office today were there voting for Harry Reid to be their leader when he was proposing legislation to ban birthright citizenship. But they want to claim that because they changed, somehow Republicans did something wrong. Because they went down the anti-American path, that means that if you are an independent or a Republican, you have gone extreme somehow, simply because you held steadfast in your beliefs and you didn't turn against the country. The legislation, incidentally, is called the Immigration Stabilization Act of '93. Clearly didn't make it out of the Senate, but that Democrat piece of legislation is going to be reintroduced by Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today, we'll see sunny skies with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight, clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92 and heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny with a high near 92.
You know, that's this story that Mike Landis had and the owners of that doggy daycare facility, and they're asking for help from the public. It was a couple dogs got dropped off. Some people, they clearly didn't want the dogs anymore and didn't want to, I guess, leave them in the woods. And I'm sure their thinking was, well, they'll be taken care of here. They, I guess, even left a sign with the dog's name, saying the big one's name is this, the little one's name is this. But there's still, I mean, this is newsworthy, and it is, listen, the business owners, yeah, obviously you can't have people doing that. So this isn't something that is acceptable behavior. It's deemed worthy of news. This is a sort of story that gets all sorts of attention, and and generally it's because people are like, "How could you be so cruel? Those poor dogs. You know, that's their home. You're their family." But then we at the same time have drop-off boxes for babies, human babies. And Missouri is one of the states that allows it. Listen, I'm not arguing for or against. I just find it this really interesting contradiction that if somebody drops off a dog because they don't want to take care of it any longer, that is just instinctually for a lot of people cruel and inhumane. But if you drop your baby off somewhere, well, that's just for the best because it's hoping for the baby to have a better life. Does that just seem weird, that contradiction a little bit?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
All right, so let's get a traffic update. Continue on. The Pyramid Roofing Company text line 447 KSGF. I'm Nick Reed. So there's a Republican senator of Ohio who's going to propose legislation that was first proposed by Democrat Harry Reid back in 1993. He's the Democrat leader of the Senate to ban birthright citizenship, and a text coming in on the Pyramid Roofing Company text line who blocked that proposal, Dems or Republicans. Honestly, I'm not sure. In fact, I don't know that it even made it out of committee. I don't know the reason why. I'm not sure if it was because it wasn't a priority or I find it highly unlikely that Republicans would have blocked it. I suspect it may have just been something that sort of fizzled out because there wasn't any huge passion for it. But I don't know the answer to that question. A text saying, I saw a comment by Trump congratulating Xi of China on his win of Chinese-American babies. Pretty slick dig by Trump against SCOTUS. Yeah, it is a big congratulations. Like I've said, China has been carrying out a war against us for a very, very long time, and they've just done it in a way out in the open with the infiltration of universities, our culture, drugs into our system. Interfering in our elections is nothing new. It really came to light during the Clinton years, in which the communist Chinese were funneling literally at times trash bags filled with cash to the Democrats. But now they've realized, well, we can we can just vote for who we want to control the presidential elections. And by officially declaring any Chinese baby that is born here in the U.S. can go back to China, and our laws allow citizens to vote from overseas, that they won't have to put much effort into it, and they will have control over our elections. They don't have to have more voters than us. All they have to have is enough voters to fill the difference, Got 20,000, Republicans up by 15,000 in Pennsylvania. Well, all they need is 20,000 votes. So, I don't know. Republicans just seem to not really, the sense of urgency really seems to be lacking. And one of the upsides yesterday, which I consider to be a mixed bag, was the ruling by the Supreme Court that states can protect girls and girls' sports. The insanity, and this tells you how insane specifically liberal women are. The 3 Supreme Court justices that have taken the insane position that a girl isn't actually anything other than just this self-described word, and that a guy can be a girl if he wants to, that the only 3 were 3 liberal women. That is how insane liberal women are. Can you imagine what this country would look like if liberal women just went somewhere else? Like Gaza. That would be a great sort of exchange program. They love Gaza so much. They love Hamas. In fact, the liberal socialist female Democrat that just ousted an incumbent Democrat in the Colorado race loves Hamas. Loves Hamas. The terrorist organization has said Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel. I'd love to. That'd be a great exchange program. We don't even have to exchange anything. Great donation. I would, without question, have no trouble at all with my tax dollars going to get liberal women over to Gaza where they can live. You can even let them vote in U.S. elections. And I say that because their numbers will not last long over there. There will not be very many of them left by the next election. The upside for girls is that there are states in which their rights will be protected by way of this Supreme Court ruling. Because this wasn't, a decision on a federal level as to whether or not guys get the final say and girls' sports are irrelevant. But does a state have a right to protect girls? Democrats were pushing to say no, they don't. And fortunately, politically speaking, the conservative side, the pro-woman side, won the issue of the day. Now, the downside is for girls who live in blue states, California, New York, New Jersey. You just list them, Oregon, Washington State. Your standard blue states, girls' rights are not protected there. So the families can move. Unfortunately, like most liberal policies, it's the lower class that suffer because they are unable to oftentimes financially afford a move to a state in which their rights are protected. But, wonder if the ACLU, the ACLU, they like to issue these sort of travel warnings at times, like, black people better not go here, or gay people. Will they issue a travel warning for girls in blue states that don't protect their rights? I highly suspect that they won't. It's pretty amazing. You watch an outlet like Fox News, and that it is filled with young women or female athletes talking about this and how pleased they are and what a victory this is for the protection of women. And the other outlets have on guys that pretend to be women talking about how bad this is. It's a pretty remarkable thing. And, not that it matters to them. Let me find what I do with it. The news leader had a dishonest headline on this, as I'm sure many outlets do. And this has come as no surprise. It's straight up, to me, it's lying. The headline, Supreme Court states can ban trans athletes from female teams, Supreme Court rules. That's not what they ruled. This doesn't ban trans athletes from playing sports. It doesn't ban trans athletes from being on a female sports team. It simply says you will be on the team of your biological sex. This is like saying because someone under the age of 17 can't go to a rated R movie that kids are banned from movie theaters. No, that's not what it says. You can go see lots of other movies. These outlets like the news leader, this lack of self-awareness or self-respect, this willingness to be so misleading with headlines even, and to try to make people believe that trans kids can no longer participate in sports in some states, that's a lie. It's just the rules apply to them like they do everyone else. If you're born a boy, you play on the boys' team. If you're born a girl, you play on the girls' team. Those are the same rules for everyone. That's equality. Those rules were not based off of how you feel. They're based off of what you are. And as Clarence Thomas noted, that, the fact of the matter is, see if I've got the exact quote here. Truth, fact, and common sense from Justice Thomas in ruling that, quote, this is part of his statement, men and boys with gender dysphoria are not women or girls. If a boy who thinks that he is a girl believes that he should be able to play as a girl, does a boy with multiple personalities get to play as multiple members of a team? If a boy has 3 personalities, believes that he's actually 3 different people, does that mean that on the basketball team he takes up 3 slots? No. Of course not. Because just because he believes that doesn't mean it's true. Ultimately, once again, conservatives scoring a victory for protecting women, while the Democrat Party continues their war against them. Right, so it was part of my speculation was right on this. Republican Senator, Ohio Senator Marino, is reintroducing legislation submitted by Democrat Senator Harry Reid in 1993 that would end birthright citizenship. And, of course, it didn't pass. A question was who blocked it, and I doubt anyone probably blocked it as much as it probably just didn't go anywhere. It turns out, and I suspected, or I wasn't even sure if it made it out of committee, and Sarah did research on this, found that, in fact, it did not make it out of committee. It was allowed to die in committee by then chairman of the committee, Senator Joe Biden. Traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today it'll be sunny with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92 and heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny with a high near 92.
Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. Emily is amazing. Helped our family over the years find multiple homes. She answers every call, every text. She gets things done and is so incredibly sweet to work with. I really like this review from Doug. I've shared it in the past, but it is what separates her from so many others. We highly recommend Emily Johnson. On our own, we found a home we wanted to purchase, which is slightly different in terms of a scenario. Later, we realized what a small piece of the buying experience finding the right house is. The seller was very emotionally attached to the house we were trying to purchase. This person was having a hard time with the negotiation process related to the request after the home inspection. The seller's realtor was also struggling to encourage her client to make decisions timely. That's where Emily really stepped in. She not only helped us, but she also helped advise the other realtor on how to help her client. I'm not sure the sale would have ever been finalized without Emily's assistance, and that is, again, what sets her apart from so many others. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. NPR, which has been known to end up with egg on their face because of bad reporting in the past, and some lack of reporting. Of course, they would not cover the Hunter Biden laptop story because there was nothing there. It was Russian disinformation. They posted a story yesterday that Supreme Court Justice Alito had announced his retirement. Now, of course, this wasn't true. No one else was reporting this. There was no indications of this anywhere whatsoever. So, as you can imagine, people were quite perplexed as to why it is NPR, which is such a standard for objective news, would print such a story. And even based off of their explanation, it's like that. It's the sort of thing that someone once upon a time would have been fired for. The standards are so low in media today that things once upon a time that would have been considered a tremendous embarrassment from a news outlet itself and would have had at least one person, let go. It's just common, it's just, one of those things. So they print this article announcing Justice Alito's retirement, and then they retracted the story. But so usually when there's a story retracted, the outlet will be like, hey, here's the story that was retracted and why. And they just retracted it, and they're like, story was retracted. No explanation. Well, obviously, outlets were pretty interested in what happened here. Why were you reporting? Do you know something we don't? I mean, some of it was just trying to figure out where did you get this information, because maybe there's some truth to it. Or is it, did you get it from someone and it came out too early and so Alito's denying it? What's going on here? After seemingly realizing that the initial explanation of no explanation raised more questions than answers, NPR reporters went deeper on the explanation. Nina Totenberg, according to NPR, somehow misheard Chief Justice John Roberts announcing retirements and believed that Alito would be stepping down. The outlet claimed that they rushed to publish the article rather than check with Alito's office or the Supreme Court's Public Information Office. This is just oftentimes how I boil things down, which may be overly simplistic. So I imagine, you're around other reporters when these sorts of things happen, because they're covering these events. You see how these things play out when there's conversations going on, and you've got a press pool standing around, and you're standing there and you're listening to the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court announcing retirements. And you think you hear this bombshell just almost casually mention with no warning whatsoever that one of the conservative justices is stepping down. Now, if this were you, what would your immediate reaction be? I can tell you, as a human being. You'd be kind of looking around like, that's what happens when there's shocking news. When you hear something that's completely unexpected that is some sort of bombshell report, you're kind of looking around at other people's reactions. Was this not done? Was there not any sort of recognition that no one else seems to be reacting? Now, if Nina Totenberg somehow wasn't around anyone else, so this could be a possible other scenario. Maybe she's listening to an audio feed and she's by herself and she hears this. You don't double check that? You hear something that is completely out of the blue like that, not expected. And given that there's no one to look around and be like, just sort of affirm that, okay, yeah, I heard this. You don't think maybe I should check this out? Again, the standards are so low for media today, and it's particularly egregious with outlets like NPR that walk around so hoity-toity, acting as if they are somehow the creme de la creme of media, that they are the true sophisticants, that if you want to have really straightforward, solid information, then this is the place that you go. And they think they're better than the rest. Mistakes happen. But when you have somebody that is considered one of your veteran reporters that's responsible, and there's just no excuse. And I go back to noting that these are the sorts of things that people would have, at the very least, been disciplined over, if not let go or relegated to a lower tier of news coverage. Today, it's become such standard practice that they don't even really bother to feel the need to address it unless they're pressed. This is just who we are. This is NPR. Fantastic outlet. Don't forget to make your donations. Sarah Myers.
Thank you. Foreman Mechanical Heating and Air. You know, the heat is going to stick around for the next couple of days, and now is the time that you do not want your AC to fail on you. Fun fact, most systems do fail because of lack of maintenance. And, you know, that just happens. It's out of sight, out of mind. You forget. Now, if you want to take HVAC maintenance off of your plate, the Foreman team, they offer an annual maintenance program. So they can come out, they can calibrate systems, check your refrigerant pressure, check and clean your coils, all that fun stuff, and really make sure that your AC is running the way that it should be. This is a great way to catch small issues before it becomes a major repair. Now, if it is time to have the Foreman team out to your home, reach out to Russell today. You can find all of the contact information for Foreman Mechanical under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The Daughters of the American Revolution now officially can accept men. Again, the war on the existence of what is a woman continues. Apparently, with the Daughters of the American Revolution, there have always been standards. Must be a woman 18 years or older, regardless of race, religion, or ethnic background, who can prove lineal descent from a patriot of the American Revolution. Boom. Well, it at some point turned out that there were anywhere from, best estimates, 2 to 5 men that were saying, well, I am a daughter of the American Revolution. Like, no, you got to be a female. And they're like, I am a female. So, in order to remedy this issue of men once again demanding that they get to call the shots over women, there was an effort to pass an amendment that says you have to be born a woman. Like, okay, when we say woman, you got to actually be a woman. Things that 5-year-olds understand, seemingly people on the left do not. Initially, the vote on this was supposed to happen in October at a special meeting of the society, separate from any regularly scheduled meeting, and called by over 90 chapters in 33 states to focus solely on the issue. So in October, you have all of these different chapters, over 90 of them, 33 states, like, yeah, this is an issue. Obviously, we have to fix this problem. We have this date in October, and this is what we will deal with. Instead, the Daughters of the Revolution's National Board of Management, according to the Federalist, added it as an agenda item for the Continental Congress, bypassing the requirement that 100% of the membership must be notified about the resolution. As a result, instead of 100% of the membership knowing about it, only about 3% were notified. Almost sounds like cheating. It'd be so unusual for the left, wouldn't it? This is, again, according to the reports, this is the DAR's National Board of Management that added it. So the left is apparently taken over. The people who hate the country, the people who believe that those who were part of the revolution were just a bunch of rich white guys who wanted to own slaves. So in addition to bypassing the rule that requires 100% notification, they instead only notify about 3% of the membership and decide to do it at this current event. And the resolution failed by a vote of 1,481 to 984. This was the resolution saying you have to be a woman to be a daughter of the American Revolution. Now, there's also a separate story in the New York Post on this. There's one from the Federalist, one from the Post, noting that yet all that has now been thrown into question over what members estimate is a grand total of between 2 and 5 transgender members out of 190,000 actual women. According to the Post, the voting process itself only deepened the divide. The Congress's initial vote was scratched before it was counted, when opponents of the measure claimed to have seen evidence of cheating. That launched a lengthy and convoluted second vote that required thousands of women to cast ballots one at a time in a process that stretched for roughly 12 hours. Delegates, many of them elderly, were effectively confined to the convention hall with only 2 bathroom breaks and no food service if they wanted their votes to count. Consumed by this single issue, convention organizers canceled luncheon events, disrupted award ceremonies, and pulled the plug on service projects honoring troops and veterans. And eventually, they would break the Daughters of the Revolution and have their way. And so now there is no requirement that you actually be a daughter in order to be a daughter of the American Revolution. Talking about just, it is insane. This is, and Sarah's talking about how it just becomes exhausting, this stuff. And it is exhausting because these aren't reasoned people. There's no intellectual exercise here. It's like dealing with a toddler that just screams and screams and screams, and they don't listen to you.
Yes.
You can't reason with them. And it does. It's like they exhaust you out, and it's the absurdity of it.
Maybe that's what they're trying to do. They're just trying to
I don't
exhaust
know.
you.
I think they're just simpletons, and they don't have the intellectual capacity to have actual debate and conversation. And so this is sort of top tier for them. This is the extent of their abilities. And we were talking the Daughters of the American Revolution. There's 190,000 plus members. They got a couple of guys that demand to be acknowledged as women, and so there was an attempt to pass a resolution that says no, you have to be an actual female, an actual woman at birth in order to qualify. And the leadership shifted the vote from an October upcoming vote in which 100% by bylaws was informed of the vote, instead to an upcoming event, and only, according to their estimates, 3% of the people were notified ahead of time, which again violates their own rules. And they eventually broke them down to where they're now allowing men to be Daughters of the American Revolution. So the question is, okay, what are they called still? And Sarah noted what Tallarico calls them, what, birthing neighbor, or what, uterine neighbors?
Neighbors with uteruses.
Do you women not see how Democrats, what, the way they present you, women with uteruses?
We're nothing. We're nothing to them.
You're nothing. You're ovaries. They are the things that, again, they present women as the way that they claim conservative men see them. Oh, they're nothing. Oh, they just think that women should be at home having babies. That's all they're worth. You're the ones that call them birthing people or neighbors with uteruses, as the perfectly normal Texan Democrat James Tallarico calls them. The names that you give women are the names that misogynistic drunk frat boys would call women to insult them.
Yes.
It's the exact same.
That's a good way to put it.
It's
Yes.
the exact same. Just throw into that whole exhausting insanity thing. This story is fantastic. A transgender biological male, former prostitute running for mayor of Hamilton, Ontario. Recent campaign footage shows him giving his speeches using a sock puppet. Sock puppet. But not
Why?
because he's nuts. And I'm sure it's some therapy thing. These are campaign speeches, and this isn't a sock puppet like, hey, this is my friend Saki, and he's here to talk to the kids. No. Just standing up there there's one video that has circulated. Let me tell you where I got this story. Gateway Pundit has a story on this, and they have video circulating. Scarlett Gillespie is what he calls himself. Currently serves as the executive director of the Sex Workers Action Program and received the YWCA Hamilton Women of Distinction Award in 2024 for his work. The other thing that kills me, all these women groups that also reduce themselves down to birthing people, that make what is uniquely a woman totally irrelevant. What is wrong with you people? I've never seen a grouping of people so willingly to erase and so proactively erase what they are and say, you know what, if a man wants to claim that's fine with us. We're no different. Gillespie's campaign platform focuses on, it's the same sort of left-wing stuff. Climate justice, affordable housing. Describes himself as a community organizer. Have you noticed, incidentally, how many of these Democrat socialists that keep getting elected don't have jobs and never have? I think this chick who said America had 9/11 coming and Hamas is an awesome terrorist organization, 1,000 times better than Israel, is her exact words, that just won in Colorado. I don't think she's ever had a job. It was either her or one of the Democrat socialists in New York has been a student for 12 years.
That one was in New York.
New York. Not like elementary through senior. No, not that. These Mamdani, he never had a real job. This chick who's the socialist mayor up in Seattle, she didn't have a job. She lived in her parents' basement. And these are the left wingers who support them are the same people who said that Spencer Pratt shouldn't be elected mayor of LA because he had no experience. And they run around insistent on electing people who have never even had jobs or lived on their own, who mooch off their parents as adults. I mean, can we just sum it up for what it is? Losers. Total losers. And now one of theirs is, this left winger running for mayor in Hamilton, Ontario, walks around and apparently can't have communication without a sock. But I guarantee you it is something that helps him not be triggered. It's some sort of therapy thing. If you are so unstable, you have to, as an adult human being, have a sock puppet talk for you, maybe you should not make decisions for a major city. I know that's just sort of a nutty idea. It's very Darwin of me, very closed-minded of me. But, that's what makes me the bigot that I am. Cis male, or whatever. We got news coming up 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Springfield's Talk 104.1. My name is Nick Reed. This constant effort by the left that they portray as being pro-trans is not pro-trans. It is anti-woman. It's anti-girl. It's anti-female. And I say that because every time there is an issue of someone losing out, someone getting injured, someone uncomfortable in a locker room and told to go to counseling if they don't like it. Every time there is someone in this debate that loses a slot on a team or instead of getting gold gets bumped down to silver, it is a female. Men are not victims in this. It's always the men who pretend to be women that are being promoted and defended by the left. Think of every one of their causes surrounding a transgender person. Is it ever a female pretending to be a male? Every athlete they support, every time they stand up for the right of a trans person to shower or use the restroom with their chosen identity, every time they're defending a trans person from criticism of taking the top slot on a team or getting first place, knocking someone to second, it's never a female that they're defending. It's always a male pretending to be a female, not the other way around. Some may say, well, yeah, I mean, but it's because what? It's because the victims are always female. This is the point. To further, we were talking earlier about all of the names that have become, I mean, even for normal people that don't use the terms, we hear it talked about, and people on the left utilize terms for female. They change the name to birthing persons. We've heard that. We were talking about James Tallarico calling them uterine neighbors. Is that what his name was for it?
Neighbors with uteruses.
Neighbors with uteruses. And so it's commonplace to hear what women are now to be called according to the left. What are the new names for men? What are they? You notice how we don't hear about those? You notice how we don't hear Democrats demanding the redefining of the term man? That there aren't any, and I'm sure that there have been conversations or, there have been some people that maybe have joked about it, but I'm talking about anytime there is some left-wing activist or Democrat politician that renames a gender for the sake of transgenders, it's always the woman we're hearing about being called the birthing person, the birthing pod, the person with the uterus neighbor. What are the names that men are now told they have to take in place of the term man? It's funny how there really aren't any that come top of mind. It's because it's not about trans, it's about erasing women. And even if there are people in the community on the left that is not their intent, and they really do believe that they are supporting trans, ask yourself, why is it that the victims are always women? And why is it that on the other end of that, the person you're defending is always a man who pretends to be a woman, and it's not the other way around? Now, here's a heartwarming story. It's same category. Seattle's LGBT Pride Parade on Sunday descended into bedlam as attendees stripped off their clothes, marched in the streets naked in front of children. One video that was filmed by Chloe Cole, a detransitioner activist, and posted by Frontlines, Turning Point USA, showed people from a group called Friends of Danny Blaine marching completely naked. Onlookers clapped and cheered while the video panned to young children that were there watching the spectacle. Why is it if I took my 5 or 6 year old to a strip joint, I would probably lose my parental privileges, but if you take your child to some pride event in which you have men waving their private parts in the faces of children, somehow that's celebrated? that we're told is enlightenment. That's not perverted. I mean, the complete vacuum of any sort of morality. And these are the same people that say, how dare you call them groomers? How dare you even suggest that these people might be perverted? No normal human being, and I'm using the word normal, no normal human being feels comfortable dancing naked in front of children. Perverts do that. And the fact that you have parents that will take their children to something along those lines and subject them to perverted individuals, which again are usually men, exposing themselves. Why is it that something you do at a pride parade, if you did it at a playground, you would go to prison? What does that tell you about these events? And the fact that there's no outrage whatsoever from the people that put on these events. Whenever this happens and it gets pointed out, it's oftentimes treated like Black Lives Matter. Well, it's mostly peaceful. Well, you can't characterize the whole group because of the actions of a few. Where's their pushback, the people throwing these events? These people don't get thrown out of the event. If you had any other parade, let's say the St. Patrick's Day parade, and you had a bunch of drunk guys part of some sort of float, and they exposed themselves to children in the parade, do you think they would be treated the same way that these pride people who do the same thing would be treated? Of course not. They'd be arrested first off. The people who ran the parade, even though they had nothing to do with it, would issue a statement, an apology that this is not our standards and those people are completely permanently banned from the event. Everyone would universally agree it's wrong. But boy, you put a rainbow sticker on you and suddenly you're allowed to have these special privileges that allow you to act like some sort of pervert in front of children. Everything that I'm saying is true. For those of you that have a problem with it. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First, meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair of the Ozarks Home Improvements. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today it'll be sunny and hot with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92 and heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny and hot with a high near 92.
All right, I have one other story that sort of falls into this fold that I want to share. And I was like, well, I want to do it before the break. That way we can move on. But no, I'm just going to do it after the break. But it's up in that idiot Mayor Jacob Fry of Minneapolis.
Oh, I haven't heard about him lately.
Oh, okay. Wait till you hear this story. This is a great one. He's outdone himself this time. Sarah Myers.
Thank you, Springfield Livestock Marketing Center. Whether you're like me and you have a little hobby farm and you like to add new livestock every once in a while, or if this is your business, your livelihood, Springfield Livestock is the place for you. Now, they accept cattle 7 days a week, and they have field reps across the listening area. So if you have any questions or maybe you need help hauling, they've definitely got you covered. And if you are just getting started, they really do make the buying process incredibly easy, and they do a great job answering any questions that you might have. Now, to check out other upcoming sales, visit their website, springfieldlivestock.com, and of course, you can find all of their contact information, plus you can see photos of my little hobby farm. All of that is housed under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
All right, so Mayor Jacob Fry, Democrat, Minneapolis. Did you look up this story during the break?
No, I just wanted to be surprised.
An ordinance to repeal a ban on gay sex bathhouses in Minneapolis.
Did see this, I just didn't read it.
Has been signed by Mayor Fry, who did so. And this is part of why I'm sharing this. To support the LGBTQIA plus neighborhoods. I have a very difficult time understanding why any group of people would find this to be anything other than vile and disgusting, that this is what an elected official, an elected body, because the council passed, that this is what they think is honoring you. Legalizing places for you to have anonymous sex with strangers. If someone came to me and said, gee whiz, I want to honor you, this is how I'm going to do it, I'd say, what? What are you trying to make people think of me? Incidentally, for those of you in the LGBT community who feel it's unfair that you're stereotyped as promiscuous, stereotyped as, just a bunch of moralless animals that run around having sex with anyone, these efforts by Democrats certainly don't help push against that stereotype. You would think people in the LGBT community would be the first ones saying, hey, if you're going to honor us, could you maybe not do it this way? Maybe something that's, I don't know, honorable. The prohibition on the adult facilities known for housing sexual activities with strangers was originally passed in the city in 1988 as a response to the AIDS epidemic. Local leaders, including those who identify as gay, deemed the bathhouses too risky to be open to the public due to the rampant spread of the disease. When the R-rated bathhouses were banned nearly 40 years ago, the city had 3, which the Washington Post says were often frequented by gay men looking for sex. San Francisco shut its venues down in 1984, and New York followed suit in 1985. The Minneapolis City Council voted 9-2 on Thursday to do away with the ban, arguing that it is homophobic. One council member abstained, one was absent. Frey, who has already indicated his support for reversing the ban, signed it when it came to his desk on Monday as a group of activists applauded. He wrote on X, Minneapolis stands with its LGBTQIA neighbors. We always will. This is what, you understand this? Those of you who are either in or allies of the LGBTQI community, this is what Democrats think of you. Oh, I know. Let's see. How do I show support for the gay community? Let's open up a place for gay people to have random sex, because that's who they are. That is how they view you. Everything about this. And I don't even know if this is a point of, like, what, so straight people aren't allowed this same privilege? Like, you can't have a sex house for straight people, but you can for gay people. It seems odd to even talk about the discriminatory component to this because it's so insanely absurd. But to legalize places that are specifically meant for gay people to have random sex with strangers, but straight people, well, no, that's still, we're not going to, let's not get crazy here. Just two main points out of this. Aside from the morality aspect, if you're part of a community and this is the sort of thing that you applaud, you cannot then be upset when people stereotype you as that thing. If I go around and my number one goal in life is to promote, soccer, and that's all I do, soccer, 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 and then, I get ticked off because, like, why does everybody associate me with soccer? Well, because that's what you do. And when the Democrats hold these events and repeal laws that are all around gay people being able to have sex or wave their private parts in front of kids at parades, and then you get upset because people you're stereotyping you. Your organization is stereotyping you. You're telling the world this is who we are. So when the world believes you, you lose just a little right to be upset by it. The things that these Democrats do and the way that they stereotype people and the way that the people that are stereotyped embrace and celebrate it is such a remarkable perspective on humanity. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. Well, it has officially been announced, the first ever midterm convention for Republicans. This was something we, for some reason, brought up a couple of months ago. There had been talk about it, and then there was total silence. And I had at the time wondered, is this something they're still going to want to do? Because with the economy and people still, and now the war in Iran, and there's just like, you want people to feel, on one hand, like you hold a convention because you want to get people activated, emotionally engaged, feeling excited about things, because the more excited they are, the more likely they are to get out and vote. But at the same time, you don't want to, if people aren't feeling really, really great, you risk the danger of looking like you are in denial or out of touch. This is the big problem that the Biden administration had while they were running around telling people, no, the economy's fine, you're doing wonderful. Well, people knew that wasn't the case, and so denying it made it even worse. The Trump administration's in a much different position because a lot of the massive damage that was done by the Biden administration in the economy has been undone, or the things have been reversed, and we are seeing much of the benefits of it, but that hasn't been fully felt in the way that tends to overall give this sentiment of, oh, okay, everything's going great right now. And so having a big rally with that environment can cause people to feel like you're a little out of touch, and it certainly can give ammunition to the opposition. Now, this is slated to occur in September, so we have a couple of months. Trump announced the convention, posting big news. For the first time ever, the Republican Party will hold a midterm convention. It will be in Dallas, Texas, one of my favorite places in the world. It will be fantastic. It has never been done before and will be a truly historic event. He noted that the convention will focus on issues including taxes, border security, and real affordability. The convention's messaging could provide major insights into ground-level communication on the campaign trail to vote. He noted oil prices are dropping sharply. Even as we denuclearize Iran, we are delivering on the promises that politicians talked about for decades but never got done. You know, there's a trickiness to this because when you do have a lot of people that have concerns about the economy, they want you to focus on what's going good in the economy. But like I said, at the same time, if you make it sound like it's all wonderful when people aren't yet feeling it, then you can seem out of touch. So you have to manage to essentially present it as, hey, the great news and the victory is that the work has started. The results are yet to come, as long as things don't change in terms of who's in power. And then at the same time, you do want to obviously brag about the areas of success. The gas prices, they're going to, I'm sure they're hoping that they're down to the levels by then that they were prior. I don't think if, Trump continues this stance of trying to blame the oil companies and gas stations, that's just not going to fly. It just won't. That's what Biden did. That's what Kamala Harris did. Those things just don't fly with people, particularly those who aren't socialist. Then the other challenge, just trying to read the American room here, particularly with Republicans, this largely is targeting Republicans when you have leadership that we're really going to go into this convention with no Save America Act. We're going to go into this convention having no, in all likelihood, meaningful action taken to negate the damage done by the Supreme Court decision regarding birthright citizenship. Because I can tell you those are things very specifically that have so many Republicans feeling like, what's the point? And there's just some holes that really, I think, need to be filled in there to be able to capitalize off of the environment to make a convention like this beneficial. So we'll see. Environment's one that makes it a bit tricky. But, Trump's pretty good at this sort of thing. I will say that. That is coming up September 9th through the 10th. Again, it's going to be the first Republican National Convention for a midterm.
Springfield's Talk 1041, the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by J&S Automotive. A heat advisory remains in effect for the entire listening area until 9 p.m. Friday. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 93 and heat index values as high as 98. Tonight clear with a low around 74. For your Thursday, a slight chance for showers in the afternoon, otherwise sunny and hot with a high near 92 and heat index values as high as 102. And for Friday, sunny with a high near 92.
The Wall Street Journal had a piece yesterday that claims Trump was at some point thinking about full-blown war with Iran again, but decided for diplomacy instead. Trump weighing, this is some of the piece from, again, it's the Wall Street Journal. President Trump is way to return to all-out war with Iran, holding multiple conversations in recent days with Defense Secretary Hegseth, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Kane, on more strikes, but has decided to stick with diplomatic talks for now, according to U.S. officials familiar with the discussion. The conversation is centered on whether the U.S. should abandon negotiations and resume full-scale attacks on Iran, the official said, a move some of them described as, quote, finishing the job. While not making a final decision, Trump has told aides, according to the Wall Street Journal, he believed another round of full-scale attacks could derail diplomacy and hurt Washington's chance of ultimately dismantling Iran's nuclear program. Trump has also told aides he's fine if negotiations with Tehran blow past an August 18th deadline for a nuclear deal, the official said, a decision that gives the talks more time to work. Meanwhile, the president said he's currently satisfied with ordering one-off strikes on Iran when it violates the Memorandum of Understanding, which is sort of in this, I don't even call it a holding pattern, it's a sort of a tit-for-tat pattern. There is an approach here that believes Trump is essentially holding off what he feels really needs to be done until after the midterms, and that is just full-blown go back at it. And that being largely because of public sentiment and putting some of these Republicans that are up for re-election in the uncomfortable position of, you know, either supporting the effort and supporting our troops or being against the intervention and saying we don't need another endless war. And for some Republicans, depending on the district they're in, it can be the difference between whether they win re-election or lose re-election. And so there's this belief that Trump knows that these people cannot be trusted, that Trump knows that this path of maybe we can all come to some sort of agreement in which everybody follows the agreement and then we're able to just go back to the way things were before without the nuclear component to it, that he knows that that's not likely. He knows that it's not realistic, but he's just hoping to hold that off until after the midterm elections, and that's what all this is about. I think that there's a strong argument for that belief because the way that Trump is handling the Iranians is inconsistent with the way that he handles opposition. And that is, at this point, the way it just appears to the outside observer, this is going right back to the way that it's always been done before, under Clinton, under Bush, under Obama, under Biden. It's where this, they promise to be good, and so then, then they're not, and then, we all get together and talk about it, and okay, everything's fine for 24 hours until, they launch a drone attack on something, and then, we talk about it for a while, and what separated Trump from previous presidents in dealing with troubled nations like Iran is that he just didn't do that stuff. He's like, you can't believe these guys. You got to just take them out. And so whether his, this approach, which is clearly different than his normal approach, is for other reasons, maybe he just figures that, hey, we got the important part out of the way, and so if this is how we have to deal with them from now on, that's fine, because we did accomplish something significant, and that was denuclearizing them, and that ultimately was the point, and so there's no need to further escalate it, and if preventing escalation means we have to go through this whole theater of pretending as if we're going to work out some deal, fine. So be it. We got rid of the nuclear weapons, and we really diminished greatly, if not eliminated, their nuclear capabilities. So it could be that, or it could be waiting till the midterms and then doing what needs to be done in order to, quote, finish the job. Those seem like the two most likely scenarios. Springfield's Talk 1041. I'm Nick Reed. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you. Wanted to read a review for my friends over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Chad wrote, there are a lot of roofing companies that if you let them up on your roof, they will tell you that you need a brand new roof, even if you do not. That is not the case with the Pyramid Roofing Company. As someone who works in the insurance industry, both myself and my clients have always been treated fairly and honestly. Now, that is one of the really good things about the Pyramid team. They don't try to upsell you, and they don't use scare tactics on you. They're going to let you know exactly what repairs need to be done. If it is time to have the Pyramid team out to your home or to your business, reach out to Josh and schedule that free roof inspection. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at ksgf.com.
The successful primary election of this foreign chick in Colorado is going to add fuel to those who have begun to call for the ban on people not born in the U.S. being elected to Congress. Currently, that does apply to the presidency, but increasingly we're seeing these communists, these Marxists, these supporters of terrorism get elected by Democrats who weren't even born in this country. Of course, you've got Ilhan Omar, which is one of the more high-profile examples from Somalia, this supporter of Hamas that Democrats just ousted a 15-term Democrat for. She's from Ethiopia. Yeah, not even born here. I think she came here as a baby. Melat Kiros, 29-year-old socialist, defeated the 30-year incumbent in a Democrat primary for a deep blue House seat anchored in Denver. You know what's interesting about what's happening here? You know who called for this sort of thing to happen, what this looks like, and was essentially wedged out of a position of authority for it? Was David Hogg. David Hogg was part of the DNC in some capacity, and I think they voted or bumped him out because he was going around saying that in the primaries we need to find deep blue districts, and we need to get out the normal Democrats and start electing the extremist in there. And there was a tremendous amount of pushback against him for this, and there was a huge effort to get him out of a leadership position in the DNC because the argument was, listen, you don't want to take out incumbents that are 30-year incumbents, 20-year incumbents, because they're going to win that re-election. They're in there. They're solid. That's solid blue. And so you spend your resources in areas in which it's more purple. And you have you either have to defend a blue seat or you put your efforts and dollars into winning over a red seat. And David Hogg's approach was dismissive of that because the Democrat Party, he, like so many of these others, wanted it destroyed and built from within by left-wing activists, by the communists and the terrorist sympathizers and so forth. And so, it was over a year ago. He caught a huge amount of flack, but that is exactly what is happening. Now, whether he's instrumental in it or not, I also think it's amusing that the same Democrat establishment that demanded he be run out of a leadership position for taking that stance is now congratulating all of these people who are doing exactly what it is that they told him to shut his mouth about. Hakeem Jeffries, Chuck Schumer, the leadership. That they're applauding their own downfall. And they're being told, we're coming for you next. And like idiots, they sit there applauding it. It is consistent, at least. And it should come as no surprise. People who are willing to watch their own party be destroyed, it makes sense that they're also willing to watch their own country be destroyed. I mean, if they're willing for their country to be destroyed, then it makes sense that they're willing for their party to be destroyed and vice versa. Now, this was one of the races that the socialists have targeting. And again, I mean, this woman's very anti-American. That's how she won. That is how you win in Democrat districts. She has said that Hamas is 1,000 times better than Israel. Hamas, the terrorist organization. That, the U.S., it's our policies, it's us that caused 9/11. We had it coming. Democrats in primaries win today by using the talking points of terrorists, up to and including defending the terrorist. The reasons that bin Laden, in those videos from a cave, used to produce as to why it is that the United States need to be taken down, why it is that 9/11 had to happen, are the exact same things that these Democrats are saying about the country. They use the same rationale and justification as terrorists. Their belief system is the same. Their thoughts on this country are the same. And everyone acts as you have all these, even local Democrats, it's just like, no big deal. I mean, why would the news leader bother asking local Democrats about these pro-terrorist Democrats that are getting elected to their party? Why do that? That's not relevant. Really? There used to be an effort by the media to dismiss that these people were socialists. When observers would call out these people as being socialists, they'd say, they're not socialists, they're not socialists, they're not socialists. Well, now they've had to shift because these people are saying, yeah, we are socialists. Now they're shifting the goalpost to saying, but they're not communist. And even, rolling back the clock a bit, a defense was, well, they're not liberal Democrats. You would hear that from the media a lot. And that was more in the 90s and when the Clinton era, and they were trying to redefine Democrats as normal people. Hey, we're not the extreme left-wingers. And so when real left-wingers or liberals would get elected and that would be noted, there would be an attempt to be like, well, they're not, these Democrats, there may be a few bad apples, but they're not liberal Democrats. They're not extreme Democrats. Well, then, of course, they accepted that. Then it wasn't, well, they're not socialist. Well, now they've accepted that. Now they're not communist. Gateway Pundit has a story. While Caitlin Collins claims Democrat socialists aren't communists, clip resurfaces of the Democrat Socialist of American national leaders saying, our goal is communism. And so there's clips circulating, and Gateway Pundit has a story built around this montage of clips of this national leader, one of the national leaders of the Democrat Socialists of America, saying full blown, yeah, no, that's where we're going. That's what we are. That's what we intend to be. But the Democrat or the media is going to continue to run their disinformation campaigns like they always do, to tell you, after they've had to acknowledge, well, okay, maybe they are liberal. Well, okay, maybe they are socialist. Well, but they're not communist. I mean, this is where we are on the map. Even while they acknowledge that's exactly what they are. These are people that say, for example, the gal who just got elected in Colorado, Hamas is 100 or 1,000 times better than Israel. Yet if you were to present her or to characterize her on CNN as being supporters of Hamas, they would push back and say that's not true, even though she has said it. When they say our policies inevitably give no choice to the terrorist but to commit a terrorist attack, and you note they are justifying terrorist attacks, the media will tell, oh, no, that's not what they're doing. Really? Maybe you ought to tell them, because they're telling you. Andy O'Brien, the communications director for the Maine AFL-CIO, which is a statewide federation of 160 local unions, posted on social media that Democrats who don't support Senate nominee and Nazi Graham Plattner should face execution. Some of you Democrats out there who have applauded and celebrated the assassinations and assassination attempts of Republicans, I don't think you understand that they are and will be coming for you. And this is just a sign of it. O'Brien shared a link to a Hill opinion piece titled, I'm a Democrat Strategist, I Won't Stay Silent About Graham Plattner, by Democrat strategist Lori Watkins. Watkins wrote that a career spent fighting for Democratic causes does not mean blindly supporting every Democrat or every candidate with a D next to their name. O'Brien's response was brutal, saying political consultants like Watkins should be, quote, first up against the wall when the revolution comes. Reference to firing squad. You left-wingers, and this is what always happens to people on the left, the extremists that celebrate the violence against political opposition, because it's not them. Oh, it's not me. Sure, go after January 6ers. That's not me. Go after Trump. That's not me. Go after Republicans. That's not me. Those people turn their guns on you. And Democrats have become so comfortable with promoting violence that it allows for a culture in which you have the communications director for the AFL-CIO in Maine openly saying, of Democrats, you don't support this Nazi, Graham Plattner? You'll be the first against the wall once we take over. That firing squad, it's coming for you. I'm sure this, too, will somehow be Donald Trump's fault. I had a reel pop up of some guy, he's the retirement age, and he's like, hey, there's something I've been doing in my garage forever, and apparently other people don't know it, so I've been told to share it because I've done it for all my neighbors, done it for all the. And I think it was a genuine thing. It wasn't promoting anything. But it was a guy talking about using WD-40 on your garage parts whenever it's squeaking to make it work better. Don't do that. This is, I've long given you advice about air conditioner in a can for cars, and, it's a great fit. Don't do that. Makes it worse. WD-40 can break down components and actually make your problem worse. It may make the squeaks go away, but it's not the lubricant in the way that you think it is. But I get it. In the past, I've done it before I learned. Brookline Door Works. Remember the name if you don't put it in your phone or save it as a bookmark, brooklinedoorworks.com. If you have squeaking and cracking and popping, and if you haven't had an inspection in a year, it's probably time you do so just to see if anything needs to be done, any sort of routine maintenance needs to be done, and to have it done right, not in a way that's actually going to do potentially long-term damage to your garage door. Whether it's a big, massive bay door or you are talking about a residential garage door. Security gates as well. BrooklineDoorWorks.com. One of the ways that the left is effective is they use terms that they know people associate with bad things to claim they're not that. For example, anti-fascist, who are actually very fascist in nature, say that they're anti-fascist. Oh, I'm a socialist, but I'm anti-fascist. Let me tell you, Marxism, communism, socialism, fascism, all have the most important thing in common, and that is belief systems that the people in charge should control your lives. They may have different management styles, but the management style isn't what is inherently evil. It's the fact that those ideologies, those belief systems, those political systems do not believe you have inherent rights, whereas a republic does. So anytime anyone says, well, I'm a socialist, not a communist, or I'm a communist but not a fascist, they're all the same in that approach.